Beardo Benjo. Going Under is a sweet, funny, instantly addictive and artistically striking dungeon crawler that packs in more charm than I ever thought it was physically possible to fit into one video game. I've been playing almost non-stop since I was granted access to the review code earlier this week, and I'm happy to report that this stunning little game is just as much fun to play as it is to look at. In Going Under, you play as Jacqueline, an unpaid intern at a startup called Fizzle, a company that manufactures soft drinks which are also meal replacements because, let's be real, who has time to eat these days? It's all about convenience. Upon joining the company, you quickly discover that the depths of your building, accessed via a series of slides, are filled with bizarre creatures living in the remains of previous failed tech startup companies who all need to be dealt with swiftly and efficiently. So before you're even able to settle into your brand new job in the marketing department, you're tasked with seeking out the boss at the end of each of these dungeons and putting an end to them in a timely manner. Thus begins your journey into Going Under. Head down into the failed tech startups, battle your way through sprawling dungeons using whatever you can get your hands on to survive, and attempt to overthrow the maniacal boss who waits at the end. Simple. The gameplay in Going Under is tight and rewarding, and the gameplay loop itself will feel natural to anyone who has spent time playing dungeon crawlers or roguelikes previously. Dropping into one of the multiple failed tech startup dungeons sees you slide in, literally on a slide, to a world of connected rooms that are filled with creatures, dangers, upgrades, secrets, weapons and perks. What lies beyond a door is only revealed once you walk through said door, so exploring constantly feels exciting. When you're down to your last health chunk, you might be walking into a room with 2 enemies or 10, and that feeling of the unknown often dictates just how much exploring you'll want to do before sliding down to the next floor of the dungeon. Not all rooms are filled with foes, however. You will encounter shops on your journey that allow you to spend the precious currency enemies drop to upgrade your maximum health, buy a perk, or replenish the hearts you've lost in battle. Another room may simply have 2 perks inside. Weigh up your options and decide which one to take for a huge advantage, such as health regen after an enemy kill, the ability to electrocute enemies when you take a hit, or, my personal favourite, massive weapons where even the smallest pencil becomes the biggest and most deadly spear. The other type of non-enemy filled room that I've encountered offers players the chance to take a negative perk, something like not being able to lock onto enemies for the next few encounters, or perhaps your weapons will all break far quicker for a period of time. Taking this negative perk, however, lets you pick up 3 positive items or perks, so weighing up the risk and reward is an exciting proposition. Combat in Going Under is a simple but well constructed system. Players have a standard attack and heavier charged attack, a dodge roll, the ability to throw items, lock onto enemies, and the ability to use pickups called apps, which are unlocked a little way into the game, that have limited uses but can perform actions such as stunning enemies, spawning a friendly companion, or dropping a decoy version of yourself to distract enemies. These apps are dropped randomly when taking down enemies on your journey, along with the weapons they were using and a nice chunk of cash to spend in the store should you find it whilst exploring. Speaking of weapons, this is one particular area where Going Under really shines and sets itself apart from its dungeon crawling brethren. Seeing as though these dungeons are failed tech companies, the weapons are suitably mundane and bizarre items that make for incredible tools of destruction. Chairs, monitors, potted plants and keyboards are fair game, but fancier items like swords, clubs, body pillows, warhammers and crossbows are available too. I even stumbled across a very familiar looking diamond pickaxe that was a particular favourite of mine. Weapons also degrade over time, so you're constantly forced to use whatever you can find. You'll no doubt find your favourites, but the game is put together in such a way that you will use a huge portion of the items available to you. The enemies you encounter are all wonderfully detailed and come in all different shapes and sizes, which vary from dungeon to dungeon. Goblins, skeletons, bats, guys who throw fizzy drinks at you like grenades, monsters in little race cars who come flying at you at high speed. Each room can be populated with any selection of these varied foes, and that keeps the game exciting. Walk into a room filled with the little race cars, and that needs a much more defensive approach than a room filled with standard goblins or skeletons. Ultimately though, the goal is to make it to the bottom floor of the dungeon, floor 4, and take down the boss who awaits you. These boss encounters are far more challenging than the regular foes, as they have a far more varied set of attacks and patterns, using area of effect and gap closing attacks constantly, while also spawning in additional mobs to support them during the fight. Coming out on top, however, rewards the player with a permanent increase to their health and progresses the overall story of Going Under, so seeking out these bosses should always be your primary concern. It is, however, not your only quest. Speak to the other employees of Fizzle in the hub area and they'll give you tasks and optional objectives to complete, such as setting a certain amount of items on fire or buying a certain item from the shop that make returning to previously completed dungeons an exciting proposition. Your success in any of the dungeons relies on the player to do sufficient exploring to find as many perks and stat boosters as possible. Sure, you could run to the end and face off against the boss with just a pencil, but your chances of victory are fairly slim. The risk of exploring is that you'll lose health, searching room after room of adversaries, but the reward comes in the shape of stackable perks. The more you find, the more powerful you are, as each perk works together to create devastating synergies. On one of my more successful runs, if I took a hit, the enemies would be electrocuted. If I used an app, the enemies would be electrocuted. If I dodged away from an incoming attack, I would drop a bomb, and my weapons were all comedically huge, giving me range and advantage over most enemies in the dungeon. It's in these moments where the perks and skills you've picked up all click together that Going Under feels best. At times it can be challenging, and like all games of this nature, there is a heavy reliance on the RNG gods to provide you with the best items, but sadly it doesn't always go in your favour, and that feeds into the infinite replayability of this particular genre. I don't really need to speak much about the visuals because quite honestly they do all the talking for themselves. From the moment I jumped into Going Under, I was enamoured with its unique art style and bright explosive visual design. The world is exceptionally vibrant and the hilarious riffs on existing companies like Tinder and Bitcoin are made even more brilliant when it's all realised in such a high quality stylised way. Swinging your weapon will destroy almost anything in its path, so often combat encounters are an incredible display of exploding tables, yoga balls flying around the room causing damage upon impact with enemies, and particle effects from the chaos you've just caused. It's wonderful to look at, and even when things get extremely chaotic, the game performs at a constant and solid frame rate, or at least it has done during my time spent in the world playing with the Steam version on highest settings. The art style, however, does remind me of another indie title that has a special place in my heart, and that is a little game called Art School. Just look at the main character designs. Maybe Froshman grew up and started a tech company. The supporting cast of Going Under are a wild and varied bunch, each character representing a different workplace stereotype. From the overly laid-back, carefree employee to the highly strung, always-on-edge one, it's likely you'll have worked alongside characters just like this in your real life, although probably not such exaggerated versions. Each conversation with these characters in the hub world is a joy. The dialogue is well written and exceptionally tongue-in-cheek. I particularly enjoyed my descent into the Winky Dink tech startup, a parody of Tinder where you can initiate mini-boss battles by swiping left or right on enemy profiles, where enemies attack you with body pillows, and where the boss encounter was against a disembodied head called Hover Hands. Littered with hip young internet speak and references to existing companies like YouTube, Tinder, Bitcoin and Apple, the game is an exaggerated parody of all those Silicon Valley tech companies that value beanbags, parties and ping pong tables just as much as, or perhaps more than, the actual hard work and end result of the tech company they work for. These characters only help to elevate Going Under and give the player a hilarious break in between all the action of the dungeon crawling sections. In terms of longevity, upon completing a dungeon and beating the boss, you might think there's no reason to replay those areas, but Going Under cleverly employs additional tasks and reasons to keep you coming back for more. Each perk in the game has a familiarity level, for example. Find and use that perk in any dungeon to level it up to the point where you can actually equip it as a starting perk for new runs. Characters will also send you on quests, which upon completion unlock that character to be used as a mentor. Mentors have specific skills like being able to shoplift one item from the shops inside the dungeons for free, and using each mentor repeatedly levels them up and ultimately unlocks more perks and reasons to continue to use them on your runs. The game also provides you with a currency that can only be spent in the hub world. New perks can be purchased and added to the pool of existing drops for the dungeons, meaning that the more you invest into purchasing these items, the more varied each run of a dungeon will be. The list goes on, but there are an incredible amount of systems at play within Going Under that will keep players returning for more, time and time again. Personally, I can see myself sinking a huge amount of time into Going Under, and I've already carefully considered picking up a Switch version alongside the PC as the game feels so perfectly suited to the portable style of play that Nintendo's console offers. The vibrant setting, tongue-in-cheek parodies and rewarding dungeon crawling systems work perfectly alongside one another to help Going Under stand out amongst its competition, and it treads that delicate line that makes it instantly accessible and enjoyable for younger players, as well as having hidden innuendo, depth and meaning for older players. I really cannot recommend Going Under enough. If you're looking for a pick up and play experience that is beautifully put together and will leave you with a smile on your face for the duration of each session, then make sure this game is on your radar. Going Under launches on the 24th of September for PC and Nintendo Switch.